Today, do this live video. We're going to talk about the Cult of Ambiguity in a minute. I just want everybody to know that the Ivan Runer book is in the final stages of proofreading. The book is done, like it's finished. We're just doing the final stages of proofreading. I've actually got people working on getting, setting up the cover and start looking at how we're going to publish and all that stuff. So it's moving forward really, really fast. And I'm already lining up some podcast dates and working with some people to get the word out and start talking to people about it. I mean, I'm going to pull out all the punches on this one because I just really believe that this is important. It's something that we need to do, right? It's just important to rebuild this and show people how it's rebuilt and how it's reconstructed, all right? So the thing that I want to talk to everybody about today, right, is the idea of the cult of ambiguity. And I call it that, and it's because I start to notice like patterns in everything, and patterns in behavior, and patterns in what people write, and what they say, and all that stuff, right? And those patterns, you start to recognize it because a lot of people, they just sort of live in bubbles, you know, but I kind of get to witness a lot of different behavior from a lot of different people, and you start to recognize it, like this group of people acts this certain way, and they have their talking points, and they represent this, and they talk like this, and they do this, and then this group over here does the same thing, but they have their own talking points, their own views, and their own things, and you just start recognizing patterns of behavior, and you start to see, like, what it is people are trying to do, and what they're motivated by, and what they're trying to accomplish, right? And so the thing is that when you're talking to people and you're trying to discern, like, how are we going to reconstruct the faith? How are we going to rebuild this? How are we going to, move forward, right? The idea is that when we're moving forward, we understand the obstacles that are in our way first. Second thing is you want to know the mechanics of what you're doing. And the third thing, you want to be able to fill out the aesthetics and details, okay? So the obstacles in our way are things that people use as an argument to not even form or develop a religion at all, right? And that's a huge obstacle. It's a major stumbling block because we have attached this religion for a very long time to people who have no desire to actually recognize it as a religion. They want to call it a spirituality or just a belief system or whatever, right? They have no desire to actually use the source material. They just want to make it up as they go along. They have all sorts of arguments and excuses and things like that. And it's just amazing. It's difficult for you to simply say, this is the religion. Like, this is what it is. And if I really care about this religion, and I really care about these gods, and I really care about this faith, then I can adapt my life to it, right? It means something to me, and I cherish it. And so if I cherish it and it truly means something to me, then I can say, hey, there's this thing that I've been doing, and it has a negative impact upon me, or it has a negative impact upon my reconstruction of the faith. So I need to start to understand how I can live my life by the tenets of this belief system, right? But a lot of people don't want to do that. They just don't. They're just, when you start talking to them about these things, they get angry, they get mad, they don't want to hear it. They're not here to talk to you. You screw you, you're a bad person, blah, 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 blah. You represent this, that, and the other, okay? Typically, these people are hedonists. They just want to be able to do whatever they want to do, and they don't want, hey, Eric, how's it going, buddy? They don't want to, they don't want to ever be told what to do, right? I mean, it's like a 5-year-old mentality, don't ever tell me what to do. Don't judge me. Don't tell blah, blah, blah. It's all hedonism, and don't judge my hedonism, right? And the thing is they have these excuses that they use, right? The biggest excuse that they use, the number one excuse that they use, is that all of the sources are Christian. And if all of the sources are Christian, then they're completely useless, and we should just ignore them, and we should do what we want, right? The problem with this is that if you're going to do this, if you're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, then all those sources that you're using are the sources where the names of the gods are, the names of all of the different practices you like to have, like Galder and Sather and all these different things. That's where all that stuff comes from. And you can't just pull the words out and then not define the words, right? And the definitions of the words represent the religion. It's that simple. If you negate the words, then you have nothing, right? And but they don't want to do that because the names of the gods and the names of the different things that you do in the faith, right, have been represented, sort of co-opted by mainstream popular culture, right, and metal bands and Marvel comics and movies and TV shows. And so like, that's the religion, that's what I want. No, that's not true. You know. And so those things come from sources. And in order for you to recognize those things, you have to say that those sources are real, that they're beneficial to us. Now, we understand that there are Christian influences and problems in a lot of these texts. We know this, right? And we have been working our way through all of these texts and learning what's Christian and what's not. The first thing we understand is that the biblical school argument that these Christian influences are sort of doesn't represent anything. You know, everything is Jesus. Odin hanging on the tree is Jesus. Balder is Jesus. Everybody's Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. You know, Thor fighting Jormungandr is Jesus fighting Leviathan. I mean, it's just on and on and on and on. And it's just theory that has no basis in anything. It's just, they would just find anything that was similar to the Bible and say, right? And these were Christians. These weren't people who were trying to debunk our religion. What they were trying to do is exacerbate the Christian religion. So you're actually using Christian arguments in order to defend some sort of belief that you have and claiming that you're polytheist by calling us, all of us Christians. You know, anybody who has any real faith, any real religion or real morality, we're all Christians, you know. But you're using Christian propaganda to develop everything that you're doing, you know. And the idea of this is that we understand that there's a hierarchy of sources. We have like the Roman sources, like Tacitus's Germania, that is basically written by a Roman pagan who had no reason to make up any of this stuff, and he represented, you know, a polytheistic view of these German peoples, right? So his book was written in the first century AD, right? And when he wrote his book, he presented traditions and ideas that we later find in the sagas that are 1,000 years later, you know, stuff like sacred processions and burial by ship and or burial, you know, cremation ceremonies and divination ceremonies. A lot of things that are very detailed and very specific, unique to these people that we find later in the sagas 1,000 years later. So explain that. So how are those sources not authentic then? And then once you start recognizing that and saying that, you start seeing this connection and how these things just continue and continue and continue, even into some of the later sagas. Some of the sagas that are clearly Christianized, you still see these traditions there that are represented, the same ones, the same exact ideas. And so you don't use the Christian stuff, you pull out the heathen stuff and say, okay, well, they're recording something that's also backed up by this, 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 and this, and there you have evidence of it and you can prove it and support it, right? Another argument they try to use is the tribal differences argument. Boy, that's a big one, right? Now, the thing about it is if you look at Tacitus's Germania, Tacitus Germania is the greatest source on tribal differences that's ever been written, right? At least about any European group. And what he does in his book is the first half of his book goes into the core faith, the core religion that represents all of Germania, okay? A shared culture, one that they all had in common, okay? So they all had this culture in common. They all shared these beliefs. And then in the latter half of the book, he goes into the local variances and differences that they had, okay? So that means that it wasn't just a free-for-all. It means that it's not just an excuse you get to make to just ignore all the source material, do what you want to, and become a modernist individualist and say that this is what it is, you know? That's not how that works, you know? And so these excuses that they make and these things that they say, all of it is meant to confuse people and create a cult of ambiguity, right? The more ambiguous they can make it, the more that they can fill in the blanks, put in what they want it to be, create something that's not there, right? The more they can imbue their modernist worldview into it, not adapt their life to the religion at all, and simply force it into what they want it to be, right? And these are people who do this, New Agers do this to every culture they touch. I remember reading an account of a Native American powwow, right? And these guys, the Native Americans, had New Agers show up, people who were white, who were not Native American at all, and they wanted to be a part of the powwows, and you got to let us in because we're so-and-so, and you got to do it, blah, 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 and they come up with all their excuses to get in there. And they said the problem was, they were nice people, and they were like, hey, if you want to come and, you want to represent something, okay, that's fine, I guess, because they were trying to be polite to them and all that stuff. And they said they had never witnessed more disrespect from people ever in their lives, right? That these people were leaving trash all over the place on sacred grounds. They would have their feathers on, and then the feathers, they would just, be going crazy, and their feathers would come off, and they just leave them on the ground, which was a desecration to them. I mean, it's just no respect whatsoever. It didn't matter. It doesn't matter at all, And these people believe that this religion is theirs, okay? You can see like what they did with Druidism. Druidism, because there's very little evidence on it, there's a lot of ambiguity there. So they filled it with as much postmodern, progressive nonsense that they possibly could. And it just became just a big, giant New Age hoax. Now, there's a lot of good Druidist reconstructionists out there now that are doing some really good work with that stuff, and I applaud them. But I'm telling you, most of that stuff was just gross, that they were doing early on. So, I've told people before about being in Hawaii, and they had, New Agers showing up to their shrines and leaving beer bottles. Bottles of beer as an offering, not an empty beer bottle, a full bottle of beer as an offering. And the Hawaiians kept telling them, look, dude, our religion doesn't work that way. Don't leave that stuff here. Leave us alone. This is not your faith, not your culture. Leave us alone, right? And they didn't care. They just kept doing it, no respect at all, no boundaries ever. We do what we want to do, right? And so they accuse people of being gatekeepers. They accuse people of being bullies or whatever. But that's all they do, is going around and disrespect indigenous cultures, indigenous peoples. They work as a mob and try to bully people into accepting the things that they say, and they use that ambiguity and all these different sort of mental hoops that they jump through in order to just get people just to let them in and let them do what they want to. They also do the same thing to Christians, which is why so many churches allowed that. And now a lot of them are flying rainbow flags and being progressive and all this stuff, And it's like, you can believe what you want to believe, right? But trying to take cultures that already exist and have a standard that doesn't agree with your standard and trying to change that into that is revolting, right? This isn't that. This isn't you. You don't belong here, period. Go away, and they just can't accept that. So the idea of creating a culture of ambiguity is the basis of all of it. A good example of that right now that exists in heathenry, I say so-called heathenry because these people are not heathens, is the animist movement that's growing, right? And it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. You know why it's getting bigger and bigger? Is because people like the Norna Society, Survive the Jive, Hari Akasha, a lot of different groups out there are working really, really hard to define the parameters of this faith, right? And are being successful at it, okay? Now, that success is always going to come with an imbalance, at least for these people, for the New Agers, because the New Agers for the longest time had to just hide in the shadows and just pretend like they're actually, performing authentic heathen beliefs and all that stuff when they're just making up stuff, and it's a lot of it's just left-hand path, occultism, nonsense, Aleister Crowley type stuff, and just a bunch of just garbage, And then people come along and they actually define what these things are from the sources, from the material, from the actual traditions, right? And what they do is they shift, right? They realize that the game is up, that you're not going to get to do this anymore. People are getting tired of it. They're just sick of you because you don't represent this stuff at all. And so what do? They shifted, Oh, we're not polytheists anymore. We're animists now, right? And what we do is we don't care about the gods. And I've seen a lot of them saying that. We don't care about the gods. We care about the Landweiter, right? The Landweiter, which are a group of ambiguous spirits that have no definition whatsoever in them. There's some vague references into them in just a few sagas, right? And that creates the cult of ambiguity. It's just something that's just there, Like you talk about them, you see these people who are like, well, wow, what is your religion? My religion is just going out into nature, and I just stand in nature, and that's my church, and that's my faith. And it's like, so you just stand in the woods, and that's your religion? You just stand in the woods and do nothing, you know? Like, okay, well, I don't see how that's connected to any tradition. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. I'm not judging you for that. But calling that heathen, calling that polytheist is not real. It's a delusion. It's not reality. And people get mad at you for saying that. How dare you say that? Well, I'm just saying the truth. Do you want me to lie? Oh, okay. Well, it's polytheism. It's totally that. That's totally ancient Germanic religion, standing out in the woods and worshiping ambiguous figures that don't mean anything. You know, and I'm not saying they don't mean anything. I'm just saying that, like, saying that the gods don't matter and the Landweiter are the only thing that matters is absurd. So the thing is that the when you're looking at the sources, okay, and you see that the Landweiter, just mentioned in a few sagas, not really mentioned in any significant way, not given any descriptions, hardly at all, right? Just a few things to go off of. And then you compare that to the religion of the gods, the pantheon of the gods, who are mentioned literally. There's a website called ONP, right? The ONP is Old Norse Prose website. You can go on there and look up the word God, G-O-Ed, right? And or look up Iser or Isa. You're going to see them mentioned in hundreds of sources, hundreds of times, all throughout the Eddas, all throughout the sagas, all throughout the histories. I mean, in so many different ways. And there's detailed descriptions of bloats to them, sacrifice to them, when to sacrifice, why do we sacrifice, honoring them, devoting our lives to them, you know, dedicating ourselves to them, dedicating temples to them, dedicating grounds to them, dedicating entire priesthoods to them. I mean, there's so much information on that to say that you just ignore them and you go worship some vague, you know, nature spirits, like I said, fine for you to do, but it's not Germanic polytheism. That's all I'm saying, right? And people act like, oh, you know, like, how dare you say it? Well, how dare you say that? How dare you come to my religion and tell me what my religion is? You know, how dare you tell us to ignore the sources? Because what happens is when these people do this, what they want is they want themselves to be the source. And that's where the how dare you moment comes in. You're not a source. Who are you? You know, most of these people are just, you know, weirdos on the internet who just don't want to be told no, you know, and they don't want to be given limitations at all. You know, you get some of these people who fake authority, right? And that's when you start getting into real cult stuff, when people are starting to fake authority, right? Now, I've been accused of being a cult leader before, which I'm not, right? What I do is I present information, and I don't bow or kowtow to people if they don't like that information, right? And I've never tried to establish, I don't even have any kind of major, you know, community organization that I even work with. I do mainly scholarship and research and all that stuff, right? But when you have people who are like, I am the authority, me, you have to listen to me, right? And there's excuses around that, right? There's excuses around that too. Like Kyle's talking about the cults of personalities, right? Well, I come from an unbroken tradition. If anybody tells you that they come from an unbroken tradition, they are a fraud, okay? There's no such thing. That doesn't exist. That's never existed, all right? The people who are doing that are trying to scam you. They're trying to con you into something. Because we've looked it up, you know? We've looked at everything available on all this stuff, you know? And there are some really great, you know, reconstructionist cultures that are developing in Scandinavia that do have somewhat of a basis of something that has been passed down, but it's not like unbroken Germanic polytheism, you know. And these people who come to you and are like, you know, I'm a Seidkona, and I'm come from, you know, a 10th century old unbroken tradition. That person's a liar, okay? They can get mad at me for saying that. You're a liar, you're a fraud, you don't have that tradition. I'm sorry. Too bad. You know, and that's what it is. It's people trying to scam you. They want you to buy their books. They want you to you know, follow their YouTube channels. They want you to accept them as an authority so that whatever they say, you will accept as authority, right? And we've had some of them just say it. I am the authority. We don't need to read books. We don't need to look at stuff. We don't have to read any of these sources. All these sources don't matter. They don't mean anything. All that matters is what I say, right? And you get some of them that come up with their little degrees and stuff. Oh, I have a PhD, or I have this. So don't listen to those books. Listen to me, right? And I've had debates with people, and literally 20 minutes of the debate out of an hour is them talking about their credentials. Dude, I don't care about your credentials. Your credentials don't mean anything. They could, if you're like using that to back up an argument, maybe I could see that. Possibly not, But the thing is that when you're coming to a debate, you come into debate armed with source material. This means this is connected to this is how we came up with this word means this, so on and so forth, right? And if you can't come to an argument loaded with actual arguments and debates and sources, then you don't really represent anything, And that's all we're saying, is that the source material is the source material. It is what it is. You can't change it. You can't make it what you want it to be, right? And there are mechanics in reconstructing this stuff. And the mechanics of it helps us to rebuild the religion, okay? And so if you have people that are like, there are no mechanics, if you have people that are like, there is no basis for this, the sources don't matter, and all that stuff, then you can't reconstruct anything, And then it just becomes whatever you want to. And this religion is not a religion of feelings, And that's what everybody wants to make it out to be. And so they hear the excuses from the Cult of Ambiguity, and they're like, well, of course I can, because I have all these excuses. I have the excuses from the Cult of Ambiguity. These sources are Christian, tribal differences, blah, 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 this, that, and the other, And it's like, it's all nonsense, man. And the reason why, okay, and I'm going to try to appeal to everybody's logic here. I say this in videos all the time. Don't listen to me, okay? I'm not your leader. I'm not your guru. I'm not your parent, okay? Don't listen to me. Listen to the arguments, okay? Listen to the logic and the reason of what I'm trying to tell you, okay? When people come to you and they tell you to not follow sources, when they're telling you not to listen to what the traditions actually are, then what they're telling you is that there is no standard. There's no litmus. There's no way for you to disagree, which takes away all of your power in this, right? And gives that power to them, right? See, I don't want to take away your power. I want to give you power. I want to empower our entire faith and culture with these sources, because all you got to do is read them. You don't have to take my word for it. There it is. Read it. It's right there, And yeah, I have a lot of resources myself, and I have a lot of great people I work with, and it helps us to make these connections between sources. And we like to show people that, because it's something that excites us. It's something that we're very passionate about, something that we really, really enjoy doing. But at the end of the day, the sources are what they are, and they say what they say. And if you don't like it, too bad, And what that does is that empowers you from these people. It keeps people from scamming you. It keeps people from lying to you. It keeps people from creating cults of personality that we know in the past has led to sexual abuse, to abuse of power, to hurting people. We know that, right? And we know that's happened. And that's what happens when you rely too much on an appeal to authority, because then people can abuse you and they can do things to you, and you may not realize it's happening to you. Or they can do something to somebody else, and you're there and you're a part of it and you don't realize it. And I know that's an extreme situation, and that's most of the time is not going to apply to what I'm saying here, right? But you have to see that that's how it leads. That's the path you're going down. That's the path you're headed to a Jim Jones type situation, or a Heaven's Gate type situation. When you're listening, when you just turn a cult of personality or an appeal to authority into a religion. Because then there is no source. There is no true north. There's just whatever these people say. Just walk aimlessly around. Whatever they're telling me to do, that's what I got to do, because their authority, they have the unbroken, 10th century unbroken tradition of a Seithkona, of whatever, listen to them. You have to listen to them. Don't read those books. Don't listen to those sources. Listen to me. You know, it's all garbage, dude. You know, don't listen to those people. Don't follow them, because they're not leading you towards something that can in any way benefit you, right? Whereas the faith, the religion, the culture, that's something that's empowering. That's something that gives you something to connect to and identify with, and empowers people and keeps them from taking advantage of you, which is what they're trying to do. All right. All right. So I just wanted to get that off my chest and talk about that stuff with you guys. Like I said, I'm working really hard on this Ivan Runer book. It's pretty much done. We're just doing the final proofreading. There's a lot of work going into this. It's really going to be, I think it's going to be really special, and I'm really hoping to get the word out there for people and just start. There's going to be a lot of stuff we're going to have to relearn from this, just from the collection of sources that we found, because it's just insane. I mean, I've just been poring over everything, But hopefully we can get all this, going here and published within the next month. We're going to start working on getting it out there and, showing people what this is. All right? So everybody have a great night. Hail the gods.